Welcome, everyone. You're in the right place if you're looking to meet Dr. Elena Ashburn, our new Senior Education Advisor to North Carolina's Governor, Josh Stein. We're very excited to have Dr. Ashburn here for all kinds of reasons, especially because she is a former teacher, principal who comes to the position she holds right now with lots of experience on what it's like to be an administrator, a teacher, and a parent in a public school setting. She is the new Senior Education Advisor. She has served as the Central Area Superintendent in Wake County Public School System, supporting 17,000 students in 23 schools. She served as a middle and a high school principal and began her career in education as a 2007 Teach for America Corps member. She taught English at Southern Durham High School and in the Durham public school system. In 2021, she was named the North Carolina Wells Fargo Principal of the Year. Quite an honor for such a competitive and prestigious award. The same year, the UNC School of Education named her the UNC Distinguished Alumni Award for her work in education. So we are so glad to have you. So welcome, welcome.
Thank
And
you so much.
you're very welcome. And before we get started, I also want to introduce Janika Moore Brown. She is the president of the North Carolina PTA, and she and I work together very closely on public education matters. And there you are. And so we're happy to have the PTA here with us tonight. So I'll just tell you 2 more seconds. At the beginning of this year, Shanika and I decided that we really wanted to make sure that our public education advocacy community and PTAs knew some of our education leaders. We have had a conversation with Mo Green so far, our new superintendent. We now are talking with Dr. Ashburn, and next month we hope to talk to Rachel Hunt, who is a new Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, so that you'll have an opportunity to understand the leaders that are working with us in public education. At the end of our time together tonight, we are going to look for an opportunity to allow questions from our audience. If you have questions or comments, put them in the chat box. That's the easiest thing for me and Shanika to deal with. So put them in the chat box, and then we will get to them as quickly as we can before we say we sign off tonight. So I'm going to start off, and Dr. Ashburn, tell us a little bit about your new role in the governor's office. What are your key responsibilities and kind of some of your personal goals in this new position?
Yes, absolutely. I first want to just say thank you so much for inviting me. I really believe that parents are the first and most important teacher that kids have. And I am the mother of 4 children myself. So just want to say that I am with people that I understand what it is like to send your most precious commodity and to school every day. And so just thank you for the opportunity to be here, to introduce myself, and just to see how we can partner together. So in my new role in the governor's office, as was shared, I serve as senior advisor for educational policy, and my work primarily is focused on pre-K through higher education. I do have 2 colleagues that are supporting early childhood education and workforce development, so we do have some overlap in our responsibilities, but I am the point person for pre-K through higher education policy. So what does that mean, right? I work with the governor and our team on direction for work in these efforts, setting budget priorities, policy actions, and working also to influence legislative actions. I also serve as a representative for the governor with the community and stakeholders like you all, make lots of school visits, and listen to the people. I also really value being visible and establishing relationships. I think that's really key to the work. So a big part of my job, in addition to policy direction and priority setting, is also being out in the community and establishing relationships with important stakeholders and most importantly, the people that are doing the work every day in schools. I'll take the opportunity now just to share the governor's K-12 priorities, because I think it's important for me to share those so we understand kind of the direction that we're going in this term. And that first is to support, recruit, and retain excellent educators. So that's the first priority for K-12 education. The second is to advance educational excellence and innovation. And the third is about ensuring student safety and well-being. So that's a little bit about what my role entails and then the priorities that we have for K-12 education.
Excellent. I was sitting here trying to take notes, even though I have this information already, but I'm like, oh, let me take some notes. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Ashburn, for joining us this evening. I'm so excited about the wonderful things that you're going to be doing in this role that you are currently in. So we'll go on to our next question. And I'm sitting here being a Dr. Ashburn fan, and I'm trying to pull my questions back up, Yvonne. So you might have to help me because I was multitasking, trying to write down what she was saying. So next question. Here we go. I'm ready. We saw the governor's budget proposal last week. So can you share with us the key public education budget items that he is proposing? So you share with us his priorities. If you can please share with us the budget priorities that he's going to be proposing.
Absolutely. We are super excited about the governor's budget that was released last week, and I would really encourage you to look over the highlights and then also to reach out to your elected officials to help promote the governor's budget and what you believe is important in that budget. So some high level overview of that related to the pillars or the priorities that I just talked about. First, around supporting and recruiting and retaining excellent educators. The first is a really ambitious call for raising teacher pay. So the governor is proposing to raise starting teacher pay to be the highest in the Southeast over the biennium budget. He also is proposing to increase the average teacher pay by over 10% over that time and to restore master's pay for teachers, right? We know that investing in teachers is important for kids because teachers are the number one most important factor for student success once they get to school. So we believe that raising compensation is really critical and important here. Also in that budget, in terms of this priority, the governor has proposed providing advanced teacher pathways. This is when a teacher gets the opportunity to be paid more to stay in the classroom, teach half-time, and coach half-time with the other teachers in their school. And this model is being used already across North Carolina in some school districts and showing significant results, especially for low-performing schools. So there's a call in the budget to advance fund and actually grow advanced teacher roles throughout North Carolina. There's also investments in teacher professional development in the budget and also supporting teacher assistants who choose to become teachers, so supporting that pathway. In terms of student safety and well-being, that priority in K-12 education, the governor also has in his budget to offer free school breakfast for every student in North Carolina, right? We know that kids' bellies need to be full in order to learn. There's a call for investment in school nurses, counselors, social workers, and school psychologists by increasing the number of those school health personnel in our school districts. Also, the governor feels strongly about removing the distraction of cell phones in classrooms. And he, in his budget, has provided an opportunity for pilot funds to support school districts in moving in that direction. And there's also a call for upgrades to school security and infrastructure there. In terms of the advancing educational excellence and innovation pillar, some of the investments in the budget include providing refresh dollars for devices, right? So, a lot of school systems invested in devices during COVID, but those COVID dollars are gone and our devices need refresh. And as you all know from your own children, just like mine, they're using the devices really in place of textbooks now. So this is really an important tool that kids and teachers need. There's also a proposal in his budget to support more students with exceptional needs. And what I mean by that is currently there's a cap percentage that districts can receive based on the number of kids that they have that have IEPs. And the governor's budget actually calls for a removal of that limitation in funding so that every child that has an IEP, every school system receives dollars to support students with exceptional needs, which goes really towards hiring staff. So that's really critically important. And lastly, I would mention that in that pillar, there's a call to advance our efforts around the science of reading that have been successful to increase literacy awareness and training for teachers in the middle grades. I'd also, the last thing I'll mention here is that the governor has called for a 4 billion school construction bond. You all probably have had the experience where your child maybe had to get out of school early because the HVAC system at their school wasn't working, or maybe you've heard about leaking ceilings or a number of issues in their school infrastructure. And so the governor is calling for a school construction bond at $4 billion that would provide districts the monies they need to make repairs and to their buildings. So those are just some of the high level points for the governor's budget for K-12 education.
And I put a link in the chat. I hope folks can access it. Let me know if it doesn't work, but it has some of the highlights of the budget, and we pulled out a special document on the education part and on the childcare early education. So please try to look over that, because I think you're going to want to advocate for this budget, right? Because I think it has a lot of things in here that really matter. And of course, as someone, the PTA and Public Schools First have advocated for a decade to have meals provided to children. So that's really exciting to us to see a governor finally put it actually in their budget to make sure that every kid starts the day with something to eat. We all, I'm a former teacher, a former social worker. You guys have done the same task in your past, and you understand how critical it is for kids to be able to pay attention and be alert. So kudos to the governor. This really is spot on, and we really appreciate it. Well, another thing that's in the news every day now that's worrying a lot of people is the talk that's going around about closing the U.S. Department of Education. Has the governor's office had a chance to analyze what that might do to North Carolina, or especially our special ed students or our small, rural, poor counties? Have y'all had a chance to look at that, Dr. Ashburn?
Yes. So exactly to your point, there's a lot of uncertainty around this. I'll talk a little bit about how North Carolina benefits from federal dollars. So our Department of Public Instruction, of their total budget, 11% of it comes from federal funds. Those are specifically funds from IDEA, which provides supports for students with exceptional needs, and also for title funding, right? So generally supporting kids who live and attend schools where there are a high percentage of students who live in poverty. The total amount for that North Carolina receives is $1.1 billion. I like this metric because to me, it makes it very real for people. But currently, North Carolina uses those federal funds to pay for 14,000 staff in North Carolina. 14,000 staff. That's 7.6% of the total staff in North Carolina. So this would be, if there were a scenario in which those dollars weren't provided, it would be catastrophic to student services, quite frankly. It would also be catastrophic to communities. And let me tell you why. 44 counties out of 100 in North Carolina, schools are the largest employer in those counties. In 85 of our 100 counties in North Carolina, schools are one of the top 3 employers. And in all North Carolina counties, schools are one of the top 5 employers. So that gives you a sense of how this would impact not just kids, which we need to center the most, but it would also really significantly impact communities in North Carolina because of the employment. I want to also mention that North Carolina gets $35 million from school meals from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So that's also a federal resource that we receive. So back to the original question, that's kind of the landscape of the dollars and what North Carolina receives and the impact. The executive order that was issued calls for the closure of the Department of Education. It also says, that services will be maintained. It doesn't say at all what's going to happen with how the dollars are distributed or dispersed yet. So there's just a lot of uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen next. I know that Superintendent Green from the Department of Public Instruction has talked about, his team is really closely monitoring and thinking about contingency plans and all that. But until we know a little bit more, it's really hard to do any impact planning of what might happen.
Before you jump to the next question, Dr. Moore, Brown, I'd like to say about that funding that's really worrisome in the picture you've painted about how important the local school system is to the local economy. It's not only
Yes.
hiring all those people, but those grant funds that come in are spent in
Yes.
the community as well.
That's
Staff,
right.
supplies, or the other purchases to run a school system that come through our grants. And I think that what we understand, because we've been seeing this in the news this past week, and I encourage all of you to Google this or look or do a little search on your browser for your community, because I've seen Charlotte, Durham, New Hanover, Cabarrus, Wake, Durham, Orange County, all talking about the budget cuts that they're going to have to make, the staff they're going to lay off if they lose their federal funding, because they are dedicated not abandoning our special education children, their services, not abandoning, feeding poor kids and protecting poor kids. So that means that's going to come out of our state tax. Our state taxes are going to be impacted. And unfortunately, locally, it means that school systems are going to be having to go back to the community for property tax increases. And so that's pretty scary. So, Shanika, I didn't mean to jump in, but I had to make that comment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, I appreciate that added context.
No, thank you. That was good, Yvonne. Thank you so much. The next question, Dr. Ashburn. So we know that you were a very successful principal and a successful teacher, a successful central office or central services, supervisor and assistant superintendent and all the things. So please share with us your best advice on how parents can support their children's educational journey.
Yeah, thank you, Shanika. I was only successful because I had really good people around me. It was really not about me. I had such great teams along the way. I really do believe that parents know their children the best. But sometimes parents, myself included, we just are shorter with our kids with the hustle and the bustle and all the things going on, right? We're less patient. And so I used to say all the time at Broughton to parents, just listen to your kids. Even when you want to say something or you totally disagree, just pause and listen and affirm your kids. There's such an important impact in terms of just pausing, letting somebody share their truth, especially when it's your kid or somebody else's kid, and then just affirming, right? Like starting with I'm sorry that happened to you, or I understand why that might make you upset. Just starting with listening, affirming, and going there. And then I had something at Broughton. The staff, we always talked about this, like starting with love instead of critique, right? And so like when a kid is doing something maybe they shouldn't be doing or they've made a mistake, again, it's very simple, but it's really powerful, just always starting with love versus a critique. So I always would give our staff at Broughton talked a lot about, like, if you encounter a kid in the hallway that's doing the wrong thing, when you approach them, don't say like, why are you in the hallway when you're not supposed to be? Like, where's your hall pass, right? Those kind of things. Instead, you say like, hey, Shanika, how are you? And then let it be, and then get to like, hey, I'm not sure you're supposed to be in the hallway right now. Like, where are we supposed to be? What's going on? So just that starting with love. I'd say the last thing that I would say twofold is giving your kids space for ownership and responsibility, allowing kids to have safe failure, teaches them about, responsibility and, building that resilience and boundaries, right? I think boundaries, especially with cell phones, is really important. Just thinking through like how we have boundaries with the digital content, the amount of screen time. So those would be my pieces of advice. And of course, I say that as one parent talking to other parents who, don't always get it right. But that was just my experiences in being a teacher and a principal.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I love how that aligns with the social emotional wellness and health of our students. And we know that that is one of those foundational pieces that we need to prioritize even before we get to things like the academics. So thank you so much for that. And for leading with love. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, adults could do that at work too, right? Professionally.
Yes.
Professionally and
Yes.
everything you do in life, if you follow the being trauma sensitive and trauma informed, right? You know, the whole thing.
Preach it.
We
Yeah.
find really hard not to say what's wrong with you, but what's going on with you, what's going on.
That's right. That's right. That's
So
exactly
I
right.
think we can take that advice for our kids and as well in some of our personal settings and work settings. So
That's right.
one of the things that Shanika and I care a lot because we're longtime PTA folks. You know, I try not to say this too often, but I was PTA president like 16 different times.
Oh my gosh.
Different years with my 3 children. Okay.
Wow.
So we love PTA and we love the community of PTA and we love our in North Carolina, we are blessed with having some incredible nonprofit statewide organizations and local organizations that support our children and our educators a lot. So my question today is like, give us some advice now on what the public can do, what parents and what the community members can do to really make a difference and support, you know, our public schools. Public schools have been under attack the last so many years
They
and
have been.
last decade. And so got any advice from us from the seat you've had as a parent, teacher, or principal? What can we do to help support our local public school?
Yeah. Gosh, y'all are already doing so much. I'd say 3 things, just to keep it simple. 1, choose public schools, right? Choose public schools. And then 2, speak highly of public schools in the community and in your home, right? And so I think that anytime that we can advocate just in our small interactions with people about advocacy and the good things that are happening in school, we have a tendency as human beings to talk about critiques or, you know, like, you won't believe that my teacher's kid did X, you know, and I think we've got to really stop and think about how that impacts public school as a whole. So just speaking highly of public schools, promoting public schools, encouraging people to send their kids to public school. And then the final one is advocate. So I bet you all are very skilled at this, but I find the average person, let me not say that. I find that many people just don't know how to reach out to their representatives and you know, that doesn't mean just this your Senate and House representatives. That also means your local school board member, right? Like, do you know who your local school board member is? Do you know how to get in touch with that person? Do you know what their responsibilities are and what are the things you should be talking to them about? So I think advocating for yourself, but also teaching other people how to advocate, how they can reach out to their state legislators, their local school board members, and how they have their voice heard, and how we do that in a way that rallies a lot of people together so that they're hearing from a large contingent of people at the same time.
And I would have to do a little pitch here for me and Shanika in that we both of our organizations and together do a lot of advocacy training. If anyone in this, you know, who hears our event tonight, either tonight live or on our YouTube recording, please reach out to us if you're interested in advocacy training for your PTA or your church group or your synagogue or your civic group in your community. We love to do it. We're nonpartisan and we like to talk about ways that you can contact elected officials, write letters, advocate in a positive way with hopefully positive outcome. And so we would love to do that for you. And also the North Carolina PTA is having a convention in Charlotte the weekend of the 11th, 12th, and 13th. Is that right?
We have to talk about that.
Okay.
Public schools
All
first,
right.
NC bestie. Yes, ma'am.
But you get the point, and I'm gonna put our emails in the chat, and you can copy them. And hopefully, if you'd like a special workshop or advocacy training for your group, you'll let us know. Okay,
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, ma'am. So what do you see as the greatest challenge for local school districts?
There's a lot of challenges, which I like to call opportunities. I think one opportunity we have is to rebuild public trust and to combat misinformation about public schools. Um, and this was mentioned earlier. And just thinking about, like, as a school system, how do we rebuild trust within our communities? Because most parents, I mean, the polling shows that, like, most people trust their kid's individual teacher. But there's been over time this decrease in public education overall. So that's just an interesting data point to me, like that the bifurcation of trusting my teacher, but not the institution. And so there's just an opportunity again to, like, build on that, that that mistrust that we've lost. Um, Another opportunity is how we consider the the incredible needs of kids versus the limited resources, right? And so I think we have to advocate for more resources, and we have to be more strategic about how our resources are used, and how we are more equitably using our resources to meet the needs of students. And I think one of the last one is around just competing demands among stakeholders, right? Just thinking about, like, you know, the variety for school systems and school superintendents, just like the variety of competing factors that people and the interests that they have, and just finding common ground there. And that really kind of relates back to the public trust one. And then I have to also mention just like teacher retention and recruitment, right? Like, I firmly believe that the quality of a school cannot exceed the quality of its teachers, right? Teachers are the ones that make it happen each and every day in the classroom. And so um, our teacher recruitment and retention strategies really need to be significant, and they need to be bolstered, and we need to make sure we're investing in teachers.
I really, right before I go jump in this last question, and then we're going to open it up to the public.
Yeah.
So hold on for a few minutes. We'll read some questions. I would say, though, that I really like what you said when you talked earlier, Dr. Ashburn, about speaking up, telling the good stories. I think that local school systems have got to do, I know they're doing a good job at it, they got to do even more. Because I think
Yes.
when people hear the stories of student success and educator success, um, and I think that that changes the narrative in the public, where they get to hear the good things that public schools are doing. So I really appreciate that you said, talk positive, but talk out loud and
Yes.
share and write letters to the editors and make sure people know how important your public schools are to you. So this
That's
is
right.
a little deviation in our last question before we read some of the questions from our audience. And that is, what is a slogan or a motto that you use to guide your work, or something that helps you keep your energy, your positive focus? What kind of guides Dr. Ashburn?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are several things. I would say one thing that I really think about is Mother Teresa and her quote, and I'm sure I'm not going to get it quite right. She said, not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. And that is such a meaningful quote to me, because I think change happens with individual people in individual relationships. And so, it's not usually these, like, grand gestures that change minds and hearts. It's these small interactions and consistency of always treating people with respect and dignity. And to me, in the business that we're all talking about, which is educating, is really like doing small things with great love for kids, like centering the kids in that effort.
I love that one. I think that's really excellent, and I think it's also really something that speaks to me as a worn out PTA person and worn out advocate. Is that
Yeah.
sometimes we have to remember we cannot do it all.
That's
And,
right.
you know, but we can do little things and that adds up, which is
That's right.
one of the reasons why you need to join your PTA, friends. I'm a member of all the PTAs in my neighborhood and of the North Carolina PTA. I don't have any kids in school, but I do love my community schools and I want to support my public schools. So,
Great.
so let's see, there's some questions in here. The biggest question in here is about Leandro. Leandro plan, folks are saying, you know, wasn't in the governor's budget, or they didn't see it in the governor's budget. They didn't see the funding for the next couple of phases. And do you have any insight on that or anything that you can share about why that wasn't kind of highlighted in the governor's first budget?
Yeah. So in the governor's education budget, or in the budget and the education components, we recognize that the whole plan for Leandro wasn't included in the budget, but there are many components of the budget that do align with the Leandro plan and the calls for changes within the Leandro plan. So and we know that we can't achieve everything in a singular budget. There's been, you know, there are so many competing demands, and you'll hear our governor talk a lot about this coming fiscal cliff due to significant tax cuts in North Carolina that are coming. So really it's about seeing, you know, what components of the plan could go into the budget in this time where we simply can't fund everything.
Okay, and one of the other questions we had earlier from someone who emailed me, Shanika, and said they couldn't be here, but they're very interested in, is what about NC pre-K? Was there anything about NC pre-K in the budget? I can't remember. I did look at it many times. But is that a part of the early childhood education focus, or what can you tell us about that?
Yes. And my colleague Madhu is the policy director that does early childhood education, but I do have a little bit of understanding of some of the investments that were in it, and there were calls to increase access to childcare and early education, specifically increasing childcare subsidy rates so that providers can increase teacher salaries, expanding pre-K by 1,000 slots across North Carolina, so that more children show up to kindergarten ready. And then there was also a provision in the budget about creating summertime enrichment opportunities for young children to get ready for kindergarten. I will also mention to you all that the very first executive order for establishing a task force was around childcare. They're actually meeting for the first time next week. So this is a high priority for Governor Stein, is understanding how we can improve childcare and early childhood education in North Carolina. So he has called for establishment of a task force that's going to examine and propose solutions around making sure that it's affordable and that families have access to these to education for their kids.
Well, and what's startling is when you look across North Carolina and you see how many kids are qualified and on the NC pre-K waiting list, and then you see how many kids do not get that
I
opportunity,
know.
and that doesn't bode well, right? I mean, you don't get to make up that year of being 3 or that year of being 4,
That's right.
forward, and
That's
now
right.
you're 5. And
That's
you move on to public schools. And even some of the research around reading and learning to read shows how much more positive the grade 3 reading scores are for kids who have a high quality, good pre-K education. So I'm really glad,
100%.
you know, to see that. And one of the things that I think that all of us agree because of just the nature of why we're on this call and why we're all doing this work, is that, you know, there are just some things that need to be done in the state. Universal pre-K is one of them, which means that any kid that's qualified would automatically be enrolled in a pre-K program. And then universal meals for children, right? Which we've already talked about earlier. These are two, to me, things that the state can afford and that the state should do. Unfortunately, it falls often to the local school districts. So then what you create is that maybe Wake can have more pre-K slots, then, Scotland County cannot. Maybe Moore County can, and Buncombe County can, but Ashe County cannot. This is, in our view as child advocates, is unequitable. And it does not, it's not fair, right? So we're not advocating just for rural areas or urban areas. We're advocating for all children.
That's right.
Shanika, do you have any other questions on your queue?
I have a personal selfish question. So Dr. Ashburn, as you have transitioned from being in central services to now being over in the governor's office, tell us about some of the work that has stayed the same for you and some of the work that may have changed. And then I have a question from Suzanne that's in the chat as well.
I think the work that stays the same is building relationships and trying to always center and listen to student voice and teacher voice. Being proximate to where the work actually happens, and that's in a classroom. What's changed is that it's like any job, you think you know what it's going to be like, and then you really realize you don't know. Remember, Shanika, your first principalship, you thought you knew what a principal did, and then you became a principal. It's just a big learning curve, right? And so just learning the processes and how things happen and the work that you do on the day-to-day basis, that has significantly changed. But what's remained the same is centering student and teacher voice.
Excellent. I'll move over to Suzanne's question, and I will summarize the question. So as it relates to students and families who are concerned about IEPs and special education services, and the need and the desire to advocate for the full funding of that, as it relates to Governor Stein's proposed budget, what would you say to a parent about how they can elevate their voice and also make sure that their students' needs are being met, especially when we're facing all of these funding challenges, both at the federal and state level?
Yeah. So I'm going to just say this boldly and perhaps unabashedly. There are dollars to fund every child's IEP in the state of North Carolina, the way that the governor has proposed it. It's just a choice whether we want to fund it or not. So my recommendation is to reach out to whoever is your representative in the House and your state senators, and to advocate and say, this was included in Governor Stein's budget. You can pull it directly from the website. I urge you to include this in the House or Senate budget, right? Because right now they're working on their own budgets to be presented. And then, so I think find your representatives and advocate that this be included in the final budget is what I would recommend. The money is there. It's just about choosing to use that money in that way.
Thank you.
And, on that note, I'm going to add an editorial comment because that's my downfall. I can't resist. But when we look at the proposals for cutting the corporate tax in North Carolina, I would just point out, if you are contacting your local official and you are talking about your House representative or your senator or even your county commissioners, I think it's a conversation I encourage you to have. Why are we the lowest corporate tax rate in the nation? And why are we cutting it, in very short period of time to zero? Why are we cutting it again this year and then in a few years from now cutting it to zero? When I talk to business leaders all across the state, and Shanika and I get to do that a lot, and Dr. Ashburn, you're going to get to do it a lot too. We hear that corporations and businesses are willing and eager to pay their fair share. They want to pay for public education. They want to pay for public transportation, and they want to pay for growth. They come here to live in this state, and they want it to thrive, and they want a great economy. So I would really challenge you, as you support parts of this budget or all of it, the things that you care about. Special education is something I care deeply about. I'm very concerned about it, but talk about that tax rate, because if that tax rate would stay steady and not be cut over the next 4 to 6 years, we could recover and do a lot of things that Dr. Ashburn's talking about and do a lot of things that some of our guests have talked about around Leandro. Some of the stuff around in Leandro, certainly around special education, but some of it also is about much more in terms of equity for rural, poor areas
Yes.
and for
Yes.
struggling children. So we
Yes.
need to remember that. Dr. Ashburn, I don't see any other questions right now, but I want to give you a chance to say anything in closing you'd like. I know you're brand new at this and your new job, but anything else you want to share? I didn't want to leave you hanging if you had another thought.
Just want to end with gratitude. Thank you for advocating for your own kids, for other kids, for my kids, and appreciate all you do to ensure that every kid receives an excellent education because they deserve it.
And the other thing is, Shanika, anything you want to say here? I put your slide up, for NCPTA. Would you like to share a few thoughts?
Yes, continue to, as Dr. Ashburn has already said, continue to raise your voice and advocate. We think that one voice doesn't make a difference, but it is that one ripple in the ocean that makes a wave and that contributes to a wave. So we want to make a wave of voice of advocacy this year. To me, being in education for 25 years, this year is the beginning of many, many years ahead that we need to really make sure that we stand strong, we stand united, and we stand with a loud voice to make sure that every child's potential can become a reality. And education is that first key point of access. So please connect with us. We are on Facebook. We are at office@ncpta.org. We're on Instagram. We're on X. And then, of course, you can check us out on our NCPTA website. We also are always doing some fun things with Public Schools First NC. And so please make sure you stay connected to them as well. And I know Yvonne will share that information. And we will be hosting our convention in Charlotte, North Carolina in May, Yvonne. So I'm sorry I had to tell you that on the call, but it's in May now. But we'll talk about that later, friend. Okay.
But look, I appreciate that, and I can't wait to be there. I'm very excited about it, and I do want to kind of share as our last slide in the last moment here. We also invite you to connect with us. One thing I will tell you is that each in the last 28 days, I looked at our Facebook page, and we have interacted with and had views of our information from 501,000 people. That's huge, y'all. That says to me that the public cares about our public schools, that people in our community care about what's going on and they want information. So make sure that you look for opportunities to share information in your community, but also if you need help with that, connect with us. There's a lot of stuff on our website. We have a public Google Drive that we put a lot of information in there about data about your county. Sometimes when you want to advocate with your legislators, you want to get some facts, right? Some figures, some data. So go there and look at what they're spending on Leandro, what they should be getting for Leandro. Look and see what they're spending on school vouchers, for the vouchers that go take money out of public schools and fund private, unaccountable, mostly religious schools. That's another thing that we didn't talk about, and this is from my view, speaking on behalf of Public Schools First NC, that we do not support private school vouchers. We believe that the taxpayers have made a covenant with legislators, elected officials, to give their tax dollars for the public good, public bridges, public roads, public schools. And that when we divert that money away, it harms our public schools. So we could do those IEPs, and we can do those things that matter for feeding our kids and have those social workers and school psychologists that we need, so forth. So find out the facts. We would love to connect and work with you. And in closing, I would say congratulations, Dr. Ashburn. I know there are lots of people in North Carolina could have this job. The fact that the governor picked you speaks highly of your reputation and your accomplishments so far. And we'd all like to offer to also help you. You've got our emails as well. If there's something that we can do to help you in your work to communicate to the public or share information with the public, please send it to us. We will put it on Facebook, Blue Sky, Twitter. I don't do Twitter anymore, but I'll put it on TikTok. Okay, put it on TikTok. But we will share the information, and we'd love to have more and more of that. Thank you to all our participants.
Thank you.
I appreciate that the questions. We all understand the concerns we have over the lack of any information from the courts about Leandro, the lack of funding that we are lamenting. We are also very, concerned about the fact that we face fiscal cliff, so to speak, in the state of North Carolina, as well as the threats from the U.S. Department of Education. But look, we're all together. Let's, work hard, and thank you all for coming tonight. Good night, and thank you, Dr. Ashburn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.